What we're going to have tonight? Well, Michael's going to show us how to fix a Philco Bakelite thing. And then
Yeah,
but he's not going to come.
Correct.
Well, wasn't someone working on a battery eliminator a little more than a year ago?
Yeah, we all were. It was called Save the BS project, and it was Blake was going to come up with a battery eliminator replacement, an individual unit that you could put in any radio.
Right.
But
I kind of need one of those, but you know, there's a plethora of little what you'd call step up power supplies. It'll take you from 10 to 15 volts up to 90 to like 225. They're kind of cute, but most of them aren't.
are they noisy?
Like I got this little one here. Is 90 to 150 volts on the output for 10 to 15 volts on the input.
Well, where are you supposed to get your 10 to 15 volts from? Like a car battery or something?
Well, that'd be one choice. You know, another choice is that
You just use a
tiny
PC.
booster like this would step you from 5 volts up to 12. But I'm not sure if it'd handle the current.
Oh, okay.
Can you just use a PC power supply?
Well, then I'd use battery box.
Oh,
Are you familiar with the RB3 ARBE Roman numeral 3 power supply that you can buy? I don't know who you
No,
can
I'm
buy
not
it from.
familiar.
You look at Antique Radio Supply or someone like that, and then ARBE and then Roman numeral 3. It gives, it's got A voltages, B voltages, and C voltages.
Is that like the one Sunny's selling?
I don't know how much who's selling it?
Sunny.
yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, I don't know if Sonny sells them or not. He might.
They're like $165 though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They're a little bit over $100. I didn't know they were 165.
Yeah, that's is that fully built out?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, it's all ready to go right out of the box.
that's plug and play.
So what is it? ARBE 3?
ARBE Roman numeral 3. I.
All right, I'll take a look at that. You know, I did find another or a YouTube video of a guy that built his own. It had all of the usual voltages output on it to a front panel banana jacks, which I thought was kind of intriguing. It would make a nice little desk or bench supply.
What kind of battery sets do you have?
Well, there's this Ward's Airline right here. And 2 different Zenith carousels from the 50s, 56, 57. They're little leather portables.
Oh, okay.
And the one I talked about before was the Jefferson Travis. It's AM and Marine Band.
Yeah.
You know, it still has the batteries in it. I still haven't pulled the old batteries out.
Does that take like that's a tube radio, right?
Yes.
They
Yes,
take
these
like
are all-
a 60. They
these are all
take like a,
These are all tube radios. The first transistor radio I have that's battery would be the Zenith Royal 1000.
Oh, okay.
They probably have a 45 volt B plus on them then.
Well, the Royal 1000 probably takes a 9-volt battery.
No, I was thinking the tube radios.
Two
Oh, yeah, the
radios.
other one do, yeah.
The Zeniths want a 90 volt.
90 volts, some of them take 67.5. And then you've also got your filament power.
I think the filaments were all in series. They all run off of the 4.5 volt,
Yeah, right.
which is kind of what this one does here. It uses a small battery in here, and then
Yeah.
down here the larger battery. It's supposed to be a Ward's number 27. Or Burgess 21R. And I'm not sure what the voltages on those are. Never seen them.
My battery radios are from the 1920s, so they use 6 volts and then they use 90 volts.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those as well. Like the Radiola 26. And then another one that looks like an Atwater Kent, except that there's no manufacturer's marks on it at all. I think it was entirely homebrew.
What kind of milliamps do those batteries have with a 90 volt battery in a 1920s radio?
Well, the ones from the 1920s, an O1A only takes a couple of mils of current, a couple of milliamps of current. So you don't need much current. You just need all the correct voltages. But what you do, the current comes in is when you have to power the filaments. They take, I see an O1A takes what, 5 volt filament? Have to correct me if I'm wrong. And
Right.
it runs about probably 1/4 of an amp. If my memory serves me well.
I've noticed they got these new batteries that for like weed whackers and stuff for they're 80 volt batteries, but
Yeah,
up to
They should work fine.
6 amps.
Well, you don't need anywhere near 6 amps.
So they would
Yeah,
last a long time.
Your 1A is 5 volts and 1/4 of an amp. Yeah.
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 So if you have a battery set that's got 5 O1As in it, you're at 1.25 amps for current draw.
Well, shoot, guys. I think I'm gonna go work in my shop. I got a bandsaw I bought from somebody, and I paid $20 for it, so it's pretty rough. But I'm making it better, and I think I'm gonna go out there and work on that a little bit tonight. Then.
So some of these, like this one, it's a Chinese thing. Says that it'll do 150 to 220 volts, and it's supposedly designed to be a high voltage supply for Nixie clock. So
Okay.
should run a close to 100 milliamps.
That's more current than what you need, but that's fine.
That's a little more than I need in a battery powered radio as far as voltage. There might be some way to turn that down a little bit.
Hi, Gary.
Hello,
How are you doing tonight?
pretty good. How about you?
Oh, hanging in there. It is St. Patrick's Day, by
You don't have any green stuff behind you.
I don't. I needed to change that, didn't I? I should have put a big flower or a 4-leaf clover. Huh? Are you working on anything exciting?
Well, I got my first vaccine shot yesterday.
Oh yeah, how do you go?
Oh, pretty good. They got, I think there's quite a few people there, and this is at the state fairgrounds. And they've got it pretty well organized.
So you got in and out real quick?
No, it took about an hour.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Which one did you get?
Not the Moderna, but the other one,
Pfizer.
Pfizer, yeah. Which is, the benefit is only 3 weeks to go back for the second one. Whereas Moderna, I guess, is 4 weeks.
And the Johnson & Johnson, you don't have to go back, right?
I don't know that they had any of it there. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. It's a one-shot deal.
I think they're only giving.
But I've read that it's only 66% effective. So
You're already, like you say, 85% effective, right?
yeah, I think so.
And then the second one brings you up to 90.
Those are better numbers.
This might be a real short meeting tonight.
About that, yeah. Not too many people showing up. Of course, yeah, like you said, it is St. Patrick's Day. Maybe people got things going on.
Well, usually Mark Richardson dials in from Hawaii.
Yeah.
He's not
And
here,
Pat's usually here.
or else not coming, one or the other.
Blake and Pat.
Yeah.
I see there's Mike on, but I don't know which Mike that is. There he is. Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
Oh, hanging in there. You doing anything interesting?
Well, I've been working on a power supply. I bought a used power supply, and it worked for a few weeks. And it's a AC to DC power supply. Uses a voltage regulator, at least for the higher DC voltage. Anyway, it quit working a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to figure out why. Not having much luck so far.
So what have you gone through?
I've traced the circuit out, and I've tested, some of the wiring, not all of it yet, but some of the wiring, and I checked the, it uses an LM339 voltage regulator. I checked it, and it looks suspicious. So I'm gonna check a few more things, though, to make sure. There's a really weird toggle switch that's got me concerned too. It's real loose. It's just doesn't feel right. Like it's maybe it's seized up or something. But those are my two suspicions right now: either that toggle switch or the regulator, or who knows, maybe both.
I always go with the first feeling there.
What was that?
The toggle switch sounds like my first one I'd go for first.
Yeah. Yep. The only thing is, it's got six solder tabs, and 5 of them are being used, and there's no information on that type of switch. So, I'm a little wary of unsoldering things at this point without knowing the switching. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For sure.
Anyway, it's keeping me busy.
How's Mr. Osborne today?
Osborne's okay. Got a slightly peripheral question though. Anybody RFI expert? I got a terrible problem here. I've got RFI that completely blanks out everything in the high frequencies completely. And it's obviously connected to the outside power rather than the inside. When the power went down because of the ice storm, everything worked fine. It actually started up. I was actually aligning a Mohican radio, and all of a sudden I heard a lot of noise, and I figured, oh, I buggered something up, and went away and came back the next night, and it's been there ever since on everything. It just wipes out the whole spectrum. It's awful, and I have no idea where it is. I tried a loop antenna to go out and find out where it originates, but I can't see anything. It just started all at once, and I can't get rid of it. I hear dead silence.
Any of your neighbors growing marijuana? Because I've
Probably.
heard sometimes the lights they use in their grow operations are extremely noisy.
Well, certainly not the neighbors on either side of us, but in the neighborhood, almost certainly people are growing dope. I mean, it's Oregon.
Yeah, well, one other possibility is LED lights.
Well, if I turn off the power to my house, I get almost no reduction at all.
So it's coming in from outside.
Definitely.
Is there any chance that it might be coming from your street light?
Yeah.
Those things shouldn't radiate high frequency power, but like you say, it sounds like something nearby.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because I got my ham license 2 years ago and haven't been able to get on the air.
Yeah, with that noise, you can't hear anything.
That's right. You can't talk to anybody if you can't hear them.
Is there certain times of days that it works and doesn't, is it always constant?
No, that's what makes me think it might be something having to do with the actual power company.
Oh, like a transformer or something like that, actually radiating?
I was thinking transformer myself.
I'm sorry?
A transformer maybe comes into your house.
Do you have one on the ground, one of those big ones that sit on the ground, or are they up in the air?
Actually, it's underground.
Oh, okay.
Underground one.
Yeah, but windows just make 60 cycle noise.
I'm sorry.
Maybe 120 cycle noise at the worst.
No, it's not a, I used to be on radio, and I'm familiar with 60 and 120 cycle noise, but it's not that. It's really broad frequencies.
Hmm.
And as I say, it goes all the way up to 30 megahertz.
Wow, that's kind of different.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of books about it, AARL and so on, what they publish. And they've got lots of ideas, most of which I have eliminated. The idea of the grow lights, a corollary to that is I got neighbors down the streets with a very big solar array. And I don't know when they started using it. When we first moved in here 5 years ago, they didn't have one. They have one now. I don't know when it went in. And I was thinking that might be it as they switch back and forth.
That could very well be the solar array, the circuitry for battery charging on those.
Would you get it at night though?
Well, like my QTH here, I've got S9 noise level all the time on the HF bands.
You too.
And what I've figured out that is a half a mile or less in 3 of the 4 directions. I've got high voltage power lines
Mm,
that come in from who knows where and probably retransmit a RF noise. You know, it's I could probably go to the PUD or Bonneville Power and say, you know, this is killing my HF reception, but I think they really don't care that much.
I can say that's true. Yeah.
One other source of RF that I've found in the past is your cable companies. Like one experience I had down in the Chinook, Washington area is every time I drove through the town of Chinook, the local cable company had leaky cable channels on their cable system, and it would completely blank out the 2-meter amateur band.
Mm,
Oh,
I mean,
So you can sometimes use, you know, if you wanted to repurpose and get a field strength meter or something like that, a spectrum analyzer maybe, and a dish antenna, so that you are pretty certain you're only receiving from one direction. You can sometimes peek up on where the noise is coming from doing that way. It's kind of a cross between fox hunting in amateur radio and direction finding. Yeah, it's kind of tricky stuff to do. But then the most likely solution, especially in an urbanizing area, is to use loop antennas or a magnetic loop because they have pretty good noise canceling effects.
mm, I think
Problem with that is that if you're going to do a full like 80-meter loop antenna, it's got to be like 90 feet on each side, 270 feet of wire.
I don't think so.
You know, which in a typical subdivision lot, you know, you put a post in each corner, plus you want to get it 25 feet or more off of the ground.
Yeah, that doesn't sound feasible, really.
So then you're kind of sort of back to the possibility of doing a magnetic loop. And there's some recent publications on how to build your own or purchase one. Purchased are usually what, $300 to $600. You can probably build one yourself using copper tube and insulated wire.
I'd gladly pay $600 if it actually worked.
Yeah. Well, I think MFJ makes one. Do a web search on magnetic loop antennas. See if that helps you.
Yeah, there was a recent article on building your own. I saw it, I think it was in QST, I don't know. But yeah, it looked interesting, let's put it that way. And do you have any experience with it really?
Yeah, a little bit. Most of your older console radios from the 20s and 30s have a loop antenna in there. And that's mainly why.
I'll give that a try. I mean, the loop antennas aren't that complicated, and I can do it myself at least as a.
Yeah,
Sure.
it isn't too difficult to build at least for receiving a tuner coupler arrangement. You know, it's just an additional coil and condenser.
Yeah, I got the MFJ noise canceller. You know, the thing that goes to phases, and that did no good at all.
Yeah, well, MFJ doesn't. I shouldn't say anything.
Yeah, well, they're the only game in town with a lot of things.
Mighty fine stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, 2 cents worth from some old hacker.
I appreciate it. I will definitely try the magnetic antenna.
Yeah, I've been a ham for, I've been licensed for 18, 19 years now, but I also worked 30 years in radio communications for the Air Force and the Air National Guard. So I've run transmitters on VLF up to 100 kilowatts.
All righty.
And this was one that was built in 1968 and accepted by the Air Force at about that same time. And I got to that duty station in 71. It's 100 kilowatts of low frequency HF, all solid state, and the civilian publications were all making the claim that transistors would never replace vacuum tubes in high power applications. And yet here it was, Raytheon engineer on site every day.
Yeah, so the low frequency HF, we're talking like 160 meters, that size?
Below that, we're talking between 50 and 150 kilohertz.
Oh, real low stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that the Navy was using to talk to submarines, the Air Force was using it to talk to missile silos.
I hope they didn't get confused.
Well, the missile silos receive antenna was a mile-long wire buried 2 feet underground.
Yeah, I guess that low frequency is not going to make that much difference, is it?
Oh, not really.
Right?
Not really. You know, we had 2 transmitters that were Earth-based in the Air Force. And sometimes when we would go down, we would listen to the other one in California.
Mm.
You could hear both the long path and the short path at the same time.
And the Navy had that one up there in Michigan or Wisconsin or wherever it was, didn't they?
Yeah, they had that one there. And Navy also had one up in the Bellingham area,
Oh,
back in the hills.
but that's not operating anymore, is it?
Oh, no, none of them are operating anymore. Every place I was stationed except Tinker Air Force Base has been decommissioned, as they say.
I hope you snagged
Are
somebody.
those the ones that kill wells? I'm
Thanks.
sorry. Go ahead.
Gary keyed his mic.
Well,
Guinness.
show us something, guys. Is it Guinness
It's Guinness.
for St. Patrick's Day, right?
St.
yeah,
Patrick's
oh,
Day,
yeah, that's
indeed.
right. That's right.
I've got corned beef and cabbage upstairs.
You gotta have corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day, right?
I'd invite you all in if it wasn't for the virus.
And you're in Florida, right?
Down there, I think I'm probably the closest person to where we normally meet. I live right up the hill.
Oh,
in
do you really?
the city. I could coast down, actually.
Have they been doing anything down there at the Grange?
I haven't been there.
No, you haven't been there either, huh?
Isn't that the area of Camp Withicum? Isn't that in that neighborhood?
No, that's more like Clackamas area. Camp Whittican.
Out in Bigfoot country.
26. Oh, this off Highway 26 there. Or 24. Yeah, they got tanks out there.
Like tanks with guns, that kind of tank.
Tanks with, yeah, real tanks.
Wow.
Those Abrams are huge. That's gigantic tanks.
So Franklin, what radios have you built in the last year? Or
Me?
fixed? Yeah.
I've just replaced caps. That's all I've done.
Oh, yeah.
I have a hard time doing that still, even. I still have problems with my hands. So yeah, I've tried to work around it with kind of creative ideas.
What are
My hands to
your favorite interests or radios?
I like the plastic radios, and I've really gotten into wood radios lately. I've got a couple battery sets.
What kind of battery sets did you get, Franklin?
I've got an Arborphone, 1926. I've got a Stuart Warner battery set. You guys got me interested when I saw your Feta out there at OMSI.
Is your Arbor
Okay.
phone in a wood case?
Yeah,
It's got a curved front?
yeah.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. I've got one of those. I think it's
Pretty
an
radio.
Arborphone 27. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. 27, 26, something like that. I need a speaker for it. What kind of speaker do you think would go with it?
Well, for my battery sets, I have a couple Atwater Kent speakers that I use, but they don't match. I mean, they're
But
not,
But they're real pretty. They're like round with a
yeah, with the
nice
spokes in them and things like that. Yeah.
that'd go better than a like a horn phone or a horn speaker.
No, a horn would go fine with an Arborphone 27.
Oh, would it?
Yeah, that would be, yeah. Do you have a horn?
No, but I was just thinking that would be something I would put on top of it. So it would
Yeah.
go together.
The problem with horns is they're big.
Yeah, they look cool though, sitting up
Oh,
on
yeah,
top
they
of the
do
radio.
look cool, yeah.
Yeah, they fit. But so I put a monitor on top of it. So right now, instead of a horn phone speaker, there's a monitor on top of it, and I can stream
Well, one
videos
thing
and
about
stuff like that.
battery sets with their wood cases, they're quite stackable.
Oh yeah, that's true. I like the big dials too, and I've got a couple Zenith black dials that I took out of destroyed cases. Cases that were just. So I've got those, and I was thinking of recasing them or something. They're beautiful radio. I mean, beautiful face radio. The faces on those Zeniths are gorgeous. I do like those big dials.
Mhm.
I
Preferably,
started really liking radios with a Packard Bell. I found a nice, beautiful case on a Packard Bell. Figured got that one running with the replacing caps on it.
Is that
But
a
the case
modern
was
radio?
perfect.
Is that a
What's
modern radio?
What's that?
Is that a modern radio or?
Oh no,
or
it's an All American 5.
Okay, yeah.
But I found it at a garage sale, and it was beautiful, perfect condition. Just it had bad caps on it, so it looks like they hardly ever played it.
Oh, that's
And then
nice.
I've got a Mohican Heath kit.
Is that for listening to shortwave?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice little receiver.
it kind of drifts though, doesn't it? I mean, I guess you got to get used to. I don't know if mine just more than any of them, but
Don't they all?
yeah, I guess they all do, don't they? I'm just used to that. I was used to like the more modern ones where they, auto track.
No. Every time you move around, my Mohican move.
Even like the walkie talkies.
the Mohican,
Again, a cool looking radio
yeah, and
receiver.
I like that big antenna that pops up. That's like the old Zenith transoceanic antenna that sticks up out of there.
Oh yeah, the big red one.
Oh no, I was thinking of the whip that comes up out of the Mohican.
Oh, the whip. Oh, I can believe how tall that that thing's 6 foot tall or something like that when you pull out that antenna.
Yeah. It hits my ceiling for my workbench. I know that.
Oh yeah. What do they call that red antenna booster from older ones?
from
It's
Zenith,
got a name on them. I always thought that was a cool.
the wave magnet.
Yeah, there you go.
One with the suction cups that you can stick on the railroad car window.
Is that what it's for? For a window, huh? I always thought it was for
Through
a
a
window,
window, yeah.
a yacht window or something.
And what is that, the wave magnet on the Zenith Transoceanics?
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually work. At least in my memory, I've seen one work.
Yeah, my transoceanic works. I mean, I've had to build my own battery, but because that's one of the big problems with battery sets is getting the doggone batteries. And while they have adapters so that you can put a whole bunch of 9-volt cells together, sometimes they don't fit. So that's not a problem with the transoceanic though, because that thing has a huge compartment for the battery, and they seem to last for a long time.
Well, they're very popular.
They must have sold a bunch of them because you see them everywhere.
I like any radio that has the names of cities on the dial. I think that's important.
How about that Australian radio that
Yes.
Pat had? That was kind of cool.
That was nifty.
It had Australian cities on it.
And no dial.
I got a couple brown radios too. I've got a Philco Hippo in brown. A Zenith Oceanics too. I got a few of them too. But yeah, the little Packard Bell is one that started me into really getting into tube radios back. Which is silly because it's kind of a run-of-the-mill radio. Have you always been into battery sets, Lyle?
No, my main interest is in shortwave receivers and communication receivers.
Military ones, right?
Yeah, and also mil surplus receivers. I just picked up a few battery sets along the way. And I design and build my own power supplies for them.
Oh, really cool.
That's one of the challenges is having all the, if you have different battery sets, having all the different voltages available. So kind of build it all in one thing.
I can't imagine what kind of pain it would be for those farmers though to go in and get those batteries recharged and have all the right batteries and put them all right in there just to listen to entertainment, right? I got what is their only entertainment.
Well, depending on how your farm worked, you probably had a windmill to charge your house current. You may or may not have had that, and you might have been able to use your windmill to charge your filament battery.
Oh,
But
really?
for your 90 volt or 45 volt or 67.5 volt B batteries, you probably had to go buy something way back then. I mean, with modern components, it's not that hard to make. So, well, also with line voltages in our house, you can make something. But back then, yeah, you'd have to go buy B batteries, and I'm guessing that way back in those days, if you weren't listening to the radio, it was off.
So you were saving.
Because of the battery thing, yeah.
And I also had a windmill with 12-volt charge. What was he using on there?
A wind charger.
Yeah, it was a generator. I was thinking he had an alternator, but he had a generator up there, and he was running a car radio. So I had a 12-volt battery charged off the windmill, and then ran a car battery tore out of an old car.
Well, they had washing machines that ran on 32 volts.
Now that's a new one.
And I'm guessing that you got the 32 volts from your windmill generator.
Yeah, he had what was that, Aero, I think it was called, AERO windmill generator.
Yeah, that's one of the brand names on windmills. You see those on the, when you drive down the country, when you drive out in the country.
Those batteries lasted a long time too. I mean, they recharged them many
Well, the-
years, right?
The A batteries wouldn't last that long because your O1As take, you know, a quarter of an amp. And, you know, if you got 4 or 5 O1As, you're pulling an amp out of some type of battery, and it'll last for a while if it's a big battery, but it does pull it down.
But I mean, they lasted for years recharging them though, right? I mean, not like more modern deep cycle batteries will last a couple of years. That's it.
Well, the batteries probably lasted a while.
Well, Blake says it, or Blake was telling me that you can get those older batteries to even work now, 70 years later.
Yeah, there's batteries in the wall phones, crank phones that lasted quite a long time, a dry cell battery. They're usually what, maybe 8-10 inches tall and 2 or 3 inches around.
Looked
But
like
whenever the phone would quit working, you'd figure out that you needed to go get another battery.
it looked like oatmeal boxes with screw terminals on the top. I remember those. We had one.
And they would just recharge again, back and forth.
Not those.
You charged it by turning it, right?
No, the cranking was sending the ringtone.
Oh, okay.
Can't figure out if you were serious or not.
I was joking.
The cranking, my fourth
We
grade
used
teacher
to,
brought
we
one of
used to
those.
use, yeah, we used to use the cranks to charge up capacitors in tech school and then toss them around to each other.
My fourth grade teacher brought one of those to school, and he put some wires on it and a couple of bolts, and then during break in the class, he'd crank it up for us. And then he'd want to have a contest who could handle the most juice.
Oh yeah, fun with high voltage. You know, you could run the output of one of those little cranks into a transformer and really get some voltage out of those. Not much current, but what more would you need?
Yeah, he started where the kids were holding hands in a circle, and then then he'd crank it harder and harder, and somebody'd get out, and then of course you get down to the last guy, and your arms would just be shaking.
You go to jail for child abuse nowadays.
Oh yeah, he hit me once. So that was that I liked him until that, and then he hit me one day. I was talking or something, he slapped me, or hit me in the butt, and I'm like, that's it, buddy. Not my favorite teacher anymore.
Well, hi, Jim. See, you're on.
I'm trying to unmute my microphone. I think I succeeded. Thank
Oh,
you.
cool. Good job. What are you doing tonight?
Well, I checked in here when I saw that there would be a meeting to see if there's anything interesting on. I will say I was astounded by the number of amateur radio operators that are in the club. That long list that Pat sent, and then must be a dozen people piped on as I did that they weren't on the list. So it's as much an amateur radio club, it seems, as an antique radio club. Over to you, as we would say.
They kind of go together, don't they?
I think so. My interest in radio began with a Philips 1936 model radio that I used to listen to in my grandfolks' garage. Since I'm a language nut, I listened to Deutsche Welle and Radio Moscow and German and Russian in those days. And that was my introduction to shortwave radio. And I'm sad to see that I cannot do that now, although I can certainly listen to them on the internet.
Just not the same on the internet, though.
It is not. It is not. It doesn't have the same feeling. I remember the Deutsche Welle used to have incredible programming in their German service, and it was just a blast to listen to it, knowing that that was coming, if not directly from Germany, ultimately from Germany. And now, old Philips radio, 1936 radio. I knew nothing about radios then. It worked great. Just a wire stuck out the window. And of course, that was probably better times for the ionospheric propagation in those days. And maybe we'll be seeing those times again. Any case, these days you can make the old radios, the antique radios, sound like the old ones just by Bluetooth. So that makes it almost as much fun. Over to you then. Yeah, see, it's my amateur radio habits.
I had one of
What
those.
kind of receiver set do you have there?
Well, right now I have a Kenwood TS2000, but I don't have much of an HF antenna. So mostly these days it's UHF, VHF, and with the Echolink actually, which is an amazing service that allows you to speak all around the world. It's hybrid radio and internet VoIP transmission, but you can hook to a repeater in Berlin, Germany, for instance, for a net that we have a couple times a week in German. So it's fantastic. No one could ever imagine, no one ever did imagine the internet 30 or 40 years ago.
So do you speak fluent German?
Yes, before I retired, I was in the Foreign Service, and my last assignment was in Germany, and also I was born in Germany. I'm not of German heritage. My folks were American, my father in the service. But in high school, I suddenly realized I really liked languages, so I went with that. And also Russian, which is a lot of fun too.
They make it up as they go along, I swear.
That's a hard language, Russian, isn't it?
And the Foreign Service considers it sort of an intermediate difficulty language, a one-year language. Japanese and Chinese and Korean and Arabic are two-year languages, but German and Spanish and French are all 6 months languages. So yeah, Russian's pretty hard. It's a kind of an old-fashioned language. It has quite complex grammar, but it's really quite an expressive language, though. Probably best not get me started on languages. It's really my thing. But Russia, I mean, just my comments on Russia, has been a funny country. They have great artists, great writers, really great people, but they've never had decent politics, and they still don't. So is there a special topic for tonight, if I might ask?
It just kind of fell apart. Anything you want to talk about?
Oh, well, let me think for a minute. Well, here's one. What is a vintage radio? For my money, vintage radios are radios as soon as the 1980s or 90s really are vintage radios. Right now in amateur radio, we're seeing I think another one of these paradigm changes, they say, because all the new receivers are SDR radios. They look like old-fashioned radios to some degree, except that they all have the spectrum scopes on them. So they've come a long ways and they're moving along. I think there was a topic on the vintage radio net a couple of weeks ago about what one might expect in the future of radio. And I think the future of radio, there will be no radios. There will just be software that you put into something that is a computer that does all kinds of things. But there will still be interest in the old-fashioned radios, and the electromagnetic spectrum is not going away. And so it will still have its uses. Well, actually, its main use these days is the internet. Oh.
Well, podcast has been so popular, so I can see that going that way with the entertainment side of the whole thing.
Well, it's my view that the internet itself needs to be regulated, just like the electromagnetic spectrum was. If you look at the history of radio, it was total chaos in the beginning, and eventually the governments got together in the International Telegraphic Union and created regulation and divided up the spectrum. And what we're doing an artificial spectrum, and it's just to be going on as chaotically as it is going on seems to be, I don't know, it's bad for it. It makes it, as my brother would say, a mistake.
It's pretty well regulated up in the 80s, I remember.
The FFA, or what was it?
You mean the internet?
Yeah. I mean, that was back when basically only government organizations and universities were on, and that kept it pretty well under control.
And then AOL came along, right?
Right.
AOL.
That,
Yes.
that started with the defense network, the ARPANET, that was primarily the schools that were doing defense research were linking their computer systems together. That was in the 60s on up until the 80s. And then it was in the 90s that the WWW started becoming more usable. But, you know, the whole communications thing is really evolved immensely over time. You know, Jim mentioned newer radios are all software defined. Well, you know, if you want to try one of those out, you need only get on the internet now and do a web search for WebSDR, stands for Web Software Defined Radio. You know, down in Half Moon Bay in California at an old Navy site, there's a WebSDR that can be used by anybody just by logging into it. It's called KFS WebSDR. And you can use that. They've got a very noise-free area and very sensitive antennas. So what I sometimes use that for is on 80, 75, 40 meters and 20 meters, I can find a nice quiet spot to listen to myself to see if I'm actually transmitting. And or there's oh, you wouldn't believe the number of amateur nets that are scheduled here, there, and everywhere. But a lot of the 40 meter has foreign broadcasts in it. If you could understand Korean or Japanese or Chinese, you could entertain yourself for a good long time on 40 meter amateur band foreign AM broadcast. But yeah, if you want to play around with an SDR but don't want to buy one, go to WebSDR and see what's available. There's a number of different receivers that that are on the internet and free to use.
Well, here's a question. By the way, WebSDR, I'm very familiar with that. WebSDR allows you to do something which I haven't seen that you can do on the newer radios with their little screens. You can use your mouse and pointer and you can adjust the band pass on either side just by clicking and holding on the edge, the skirt, and moving it around. And that feature is incredible. And I think it probably would also be useful to a newcomer to understand exactly what bandpass is and what happens when you narrow it up or stretch it out. But WebSDR is fun. The first site there is from the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and they have the entire spectrum practically of HF radio. And you can listen to what people can listen to there in Holland, as well as you can listen to AM radio and long wave radio, which has lots of commercial stations in Europe, although none here. My question is, if you have a box on your desk, it looks like a radio, but what it actually does is tune radio stations through the web, through the internet. Is that a radio? That's a fun question because it's one of those just, what definitions that you can go on forever. But I'm curious about whether any of you have tried that or have one of those kinds of radio, quote unquote, sets. Over.
There you go.
Wind
That doesn't
radio.
that doesn't look like the old 1936 Philco. Of course, you have to have a computer with that one, don't you?
You need a display, a way to display it. You need to be running some wind radio software. That's a rather expensive solution to the SDR. I think they retail that particular model for like $2,000. I picked one up at an estate sale fairly inexpensively. But if you really want to get into it, if you do RTL-SDR, there's a number of different USB dongles that will scan the spectrum and distribute to your screen the waterfall type software and the audio, whatever it is you're listening to, directly to your computer speakers. Those sell for anywhere from $30 to $50 on up, depending on how complicated you want to get. One of those is one that the English came up with called the FunCube dongle, and that was kind of a specific thing for listening to satellite communications. But the radio chips will now tune something like 6 gigahertz, and your software will control what section of that you are actually decoding at any one time.
They use those,
fascinating stuff.
and they use those for listening to like transit and other people that are broadcasting, conversations through them, right?
Well, a lot of people use them for decoding weather satellite transmissions.
Okay.
Used to be WeFax was the one that was in the amateur area. These are now the NOAA satellites transmit their radar images pretty much continuously. They're easily downloaded or received and decoded using that sort of stuff. Two other applications of these are FlightAware 24, which tracks the transponders off of aircraft, and there's a GMDSS decoding software also that does the same thing with marine tracking software. Both of those, you can see what everybody else is receiving on the internet, and or you can build your own receiver for a few dollars and play in that game for a while.
Pretty cool stuff, actually.
Mark, do those dongles or thumb drives with radios built into them, or internet radios like RTL, SDR, do they come with the requisite software? I know that there's one thing that they need still, which makes them more radio-like. They need an antenna. So you still need to have a good HF antenna if you want to listen to HF. I gather that's the way they work. But do they have the software, or do you just pick a program a freeware program if you want to not pay for it off the internet.
The software is open source, easily run. It's available for Windows or for Linux. If you're a Linux guy, you can pretty much get the software running on your Linux laptop or desktop fairly quickly. Some of them have a little bit tricky how to install drivers for these things. This kit here is a little balanced to unbalanced adapter so that you can run a dipole into an SDR, or by modifying the circuit card, basically lifting one side of a capacitor, you turn it into an unbalanced, which you can then adapt to a long wire receiver.
Oops, I'm getting called to dinner. I'll be out of here. See you next week.
Bye.
Okay, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. To you too.
Enjoy your corned beef and cabbage.
If I can figure out where the button is, there it is.
I think I may bail out too, guys. And,
Well, it's 8 o'clock anyway.
Yep, I'll see you guys.
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Happy St. Patty's Day.
Bye,
Right.
everybody.